Hello, hello, you guys. Welcome back to the podcast and welcome Shannon of Mrs. Vondy. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm obsessed with your setup. It's so pink. I'm like,
Oh, thank
it's
you.
after my own heart.
It's my color.
Yeah, same. I'm like, despite the fact that there's no pink in the frame, it looks like green is my color, but I'm like, pink is my girl. She has my heart. I'm so excited to have you on today. For those that don't know you yet, would you mind giving us a little introduction on yourself?
Sure. I'm Shannon, aka Mrs. Vondy, sometimes referred to as the email queen. I discovered email when I sent one email and made $2,600. My business was drowning a little bit at that point because it was 2020 and everything was in shambles. And I thought on a whim, I'd heard email was amazing. And I thought, what if I just try? What if I just try one more time? Like I've tried it before, it wasn't working for me really because I was using it wrong. And then once I sent that email, I went, oh, this is why everyone says so many times that you need an email list. Because then I started making tons of money using email. And now I like to help other business owners do the same thing.
Oh my God. Well, one, flawless. We love to hear it. We love an origin story. Two, can we get started in what is the wrong way versus right way? Because I know you're like, I was using it the wrong way. Talk to us
Yeah.
about what that looks like.
Let's do it. So essentially, what I was doing at the time, I was a photographer for 10 years. I
Hmm.
had used email marketing when I wanted something, essentially. So I would send an email like, hey, I have sessions, and I would not hear a thing from anyone. I wouldn't book anything. Or if I was like trying to maybe sell like prints or something, I would send out an email, and usually I'd send like one email, I get no responses. And so finally, when everything went down, I had a friend who did email marketing. And so I started helping her because I had nothing on my calendar. And I was like, oh, I have literally not been nurturing or sending any kind of like context, anything. I literally would send one email and expect that to get the job done. And once I realized that was kind of my flaw and I started using it more conversationally and like treating my people like they're people because I think we often forget, right? Like we're emailing, and on Instagram or social, any social platform, you post and you usually get like a like or something like almost instantly, so you get that instant gratification. But with email, you may not hear from people like ever, right? Like some people may never respond to you, so you kind of think like you're just talking to a void. And I think we forget that there are people on the other side of that computer screen. And so like I said, once I started realizing like I need to talk to people and help them with their problems rather than only asking for things when I want them, which we all know is ludicrous, but
Mhm.
new business owner, I started seeing results.
Okay, so what do you mean talk to them? Like walk us through, do you watch The Office?
I do.
Okay,
Well, I have. I
okay,
don't anymore,
yeah, I
but I
have.
have.
When there's a surplus, the surplus episode, and Michael
Sure.
Scott is like, explain it to me like I'm eight. Explain it to us like I'm eight
Sure.
years old. Like it's a surplus, and Oscar gives the like, mommy and daddy give you $5 for a lemonade stand. Like, here's how surplus works. Can you explain it to us like we're 8 years old? What
Sure.
does talking to them mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think often we get confused, or I hear a lot from business owners too, that they don't want to email because they're nervous they'll quote unquote be annoying, or they will like just they'll be quote unquote too salesy, right?
Hmm.
But then they tell me they'll only email when they have like session bookings or something they're wanting. Again, they're wanting something from someone. Well, we don't, nobody likes to just be like, hey, I have this, get it, buy it. Like that
Mhm.
doesn't make me motivate me or make me go like, well, no, why would I? Like that kind of makes me almost defiant. So when I say talk to them, like send them emails about your favorite ice cream, send them emails about your favorite, like get to know them, let them get to know you, send them things that would be helpful to them that are hitting on the situation they are currently sitting in, right? So things you could send to if you own a business that you're like a social media manager, right? Give them tips for how to write better captions. Give them tips for how to do better like what times to post, if that is still a thing or not, or share your opinion on if that's still a thing or not. Ask them to give you their opinion, right? Like open up conversations. Even though we may not hear back from people as often on email, it can be very, very similar to using any social platform.
Mm.
We just don't, for some reason, use it that way all the time. People tend to just use it for selling, which is why it gets that reputation of just sell.
Just selling. Yeah. So how do you like come up with what to say? Like, how do you know what's important and what's not?
I think it's like anything, right? You can talk about anything that suits you and fits your brand, right? So if you aren't somebody to talk about ice cream, like I said, that's okay. But like, what are you into right now, right? Like a lot of people are super into like Love is Blind right now. That's an email. Like you can talk about Love is Blind as an email. And in fact, I actually had an idea about this. I haven't done it, so nobody steal it. No, I'm just kidding. You can steal it. I was like, you could say, I would say something like, why don't we Love is Blind your email list, right? So
Mm.
I want everyone to be so excited about your emails that they are talking about them like they're talking about Love is Blind, right? So you could totally take anything that's going on in your life. I've even had I have a membership, and I had a member say, yeah, but like I couldn't talk about brushing my teeth. And we're like, yeah, you could talk about you were brushing your teeth the other night and you realize some people are really critical of their smile in photos. She's a photographer. And so we're like, you could talk about how to take better photos if you feel not confident about your teeth or your smile or what. And she was like, oh my gosh, yeah, could totally talk about that. So it's like you can really take, as one of my other members says, anything's an email, right? So like you can
Mm.
literally take anything that is happening and turn that into an email. As far as like what to say and when to say it, there's really no rhyme or reason, right? Like you can choose what feels good for you and what works for your business. So, I mean, I can go into more technical stuff there, but I
Yes,
feel like,
please. I would
I
love to
mean,
learn the technical stuff.
usually it's maybe not so much technical, but it's like strategy. But as far
Mhm.
as like, I would look at like what are you doing in the future, right? So like what is your next launch? What is your next offer? What are you trying to get people to ultimately do? So if they're getting on your email list, like you're just wanting to book more calls, like you want them to like inquire with you and get on a phone call with you. I feel like that's a really common one for a lot of business owners. Okay, so those kind of things, you just want to nurture and start telling them things that will start getting them interested in having a call with you, right? Like maybe sharing some client wins and how you help get them there, where they were sitting to where they are now. And be like, if you want to be like this, get on a call with me. Or if you're trying to push something like you're launching in the next few weeks, you want to start thinking about like what kind of things can you tell them now before your launch that will get them really hyped and excited when you do open doors, launch, whatever it is you're doing, so that then they're like, cannot wait to get inside. They already feel like they know what's coming and they're excited for it. And then when you do open doors, they're ready to be inside.
Amazing. And how would you recommend like is there a balance between like because then we're nurturing, right? We're nurturing, nurturing, nurturing. Eventually we want to pitch. What does that look like? Do you have like a method or a system on like how often you pitch people or how to make it feel genuine and less, like you said, quote unquote salesy?
Sure, sure. Yeah. Well, it kind of, I hate this answer because it kind of depends on what you're doing, right? So, and like, it also depends on price point and things you're doing, right? So if you're selling a $5,000 offer versus a like $100 offer, it's a little bit different because you're trying to warm them up differently. So it really just kind of depends what you're doing. But I can kind of give you like a general overall thing. It's like, I think you kind of have to know how much information do people need before they're going to take action, right? So
Mm.
what can you share with them? What can you give them that will help them make a better decision? And sometimes that's one email, sometimes that's 10 emails, right? Like, again, it depends on your price point, what you're selling, and how warmed up they are too, right? So, for instance, I had somebody actually ask me this the other day. She was like, how long did it take you before you started selling on email? And I was like, well, you're not gonna like my answer because it was immediate
Mhm.
once I understood email, right? But I was also selling to people who had already previously bought from me before. And it is so much easier to do that than it is to sell to a cold audience. Although we could argue that email is already somewhat warm. But again, I know a lot of people have probably had started an email list and maybe have never emailed them or things like that too. So, you're going to have a lot more success with people who have bought from you before because they already know, like, and trust you. But really, what you're trying to do is build that like, no trust with whatever audience that you have. Does that kind of
Mhm.
answer the question? You
Yeah,
can feel free to follow up on
absolutely.
me.
No, absolutely. I think like people love an exact answer. And I think this is one of those instances where you like cannot give one because it's going to be so different based on the product or service. And that kind of leads me to my next question is like, how can service providers use email lists? Because I think we have an audience of like wedding vendors, photographers, things like that, where they feel like an email list won't benefit them because they only take on, let's say, like 20 clients a year or it's a once in a lifetime event. And so they're like, how would I make an email list for that? What would your response be to that? Like, how can service providers use an email list?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm a service provider and I tend to help a lot of service providers. I can also help e-commerce, but I tend to help a lot of service providers. So I'm happy, like I can definitely go on this for days, but I'll try and keep it brief. But yeah, so essentially, I think there are so many ways, right? So if you're a wedding photographer, the reason I was making $2,600 off one email, and then I actually wound up by the end of the year, I made $13,000 that year from email marketing alone in my photography business. And I was doing that with print sales, like literally just sending
Mm.
emails and having print sales. And people were buying them, and they still do. I still make just from setting up different little systems in my business that are little emails that go out automatically. I barely touch them. I make $10,000 a year just from those automated emails. So that's one way that you could easily set up. Like, how are ways? What I would do is I would think about, okay, is there anything you could sell to clients who have already bought from you before, right? So depending on what you do, if you're a wedding planner, I mean, could you help them plan another event if that's something you're interested in, right? Like people have babies, people have birthday parties. Like, if that's something you want to explore, I feel like that's a really good option. You could also probably upsell some of your current clients, right? So like people need bridal showers, they need engagement parties, they need things like that, right? Um, you could also just like help consult them on some of that stuff too. So if you don't want to like plan it, you could also just like help be like, hey, book a 1 hour session with me and I will help you like walk you through how to plan your own baby shower or whatever it is.
Mhm.
That could be really cool. And then other things you can do too, and some of my members have really had great success with, is keeping a nurture sequence going when people inquire. So like after they inquire, I have this crazy story actually that one of my members had a client inquire, and like 2 months later she'd been following up and they just were not responding to her. And so she had them on their email list because she got permission to add them to her email list. And so she had them on there and she was just sending weekly emails. I helped her tweak one of them inside the membership and like just kind of changed a few small things to kind of make it a little bit flow a little bit better, make a little bit more sense. She sent that email and they booked immediately. So she got $6,800 off of one email because
Wow.
she's just nurturing them. She was just giving them advice for how to plan a wedding, really.
Mm. I think that's a
So
great example. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, I was just going to say essentially I was going to say the same thing you just said is that it's like there's so many little hidden ways you can use email in your business and that you can automate them. You don't have to sit there and do it every single time.
So let's go back to basics because this is all like
Yeah,
so helpful if you
I
already
know.
have a list. I'm like we went right in with like how email lists work and what they look like and how to nurture. But let's say you don't have an email list. Like where does one even begin building one?
Yeah, so it's super simple. Literally, this like I have a little mini course that can show you how to do it specifically in 1 hour, but really all I would do is I'd pick a provider, an email provider that you want to use. I recommend if you're brand new, and what I like using is Flowdesk, just because it's easy, especially if you're any kind of creative type, you'll like it because it's really easy to customize and make look pretty. But that one's not free. I forget what the starting price is, and they kind of change it a lot, but that one's great. I think there's a lot of 50% off codes floating around out there. I have one I can give you if you need. If you have one, you can use yours. But yeah, so Flowdesk I love. And then the other one that's really great is MailerLite, is also free up to like, I think 1,000 subscribers. It's LITE, MailerLite, LITE. So those are, if you don't want to spend any money at all, but that one's a little harder to make look pretty, but honestly, emails do not need to be pretty to work. So that's not a requirement. I just find creatives tend to like Flowdesk because it's so easy to make look good. Um, then what I would do once you pick your provider is I would set up what they'll walk you through is a way to collect emails. So it's called an opt-in or a form or something for people to be able to put their name and email address on. That's literally all you need to collect is their first name and their email address. And you can just create this, whatever provider you use will walk you through it. It is super simple. It does not need to be crazy. Just create something and then just start talking about it. That's literally all you have to do. Hey, I have an email list, get on here, right? And you, boom, you've started an email list.
What is your stance slash your advice when it comes to building like email funnels? Like, where do you kind of fall? I feel like there's a lot of controversial talk going on right now about the email funnel and saying that it's kind of
Mm.
like quote unquote dead. And I would love to know, like, I personally still love email funnels. So I'm like, I don't believe in it, but I would love to hear like your rebuttal, what you think of it, and what you think of funnels in general.
Oh, I want to hear more about what people are saying against them. But I think they are extremely functional. But what I think people are probably finding is when you don't have a very defined goal of what you want the funnel to do, or you're creating a funnel that just isn't giving you the results you want. Like an example of this would be I was helping one of the, sorry, I keep bringing up my membership, but it's like the perfect way to bring up these stories. But I was helping one of my members do a funnel and I was looking and I was like, wait, is this your sales funnel? And I was like, this feels like a nurture sequence. And instead, she wasn't selling. She was just giving them things to do. And I'm like, this isn't going to like want to make them buy. So I think that that's happening sometimes with people is they're creating these funnels trying not to be quote unquote salesy. And instead of selling in the funnel, they're just giving free advice. And so it's not converting the way they want. And that's maybe a reason people are thinking that quote unquote funnels are dead. I tend to agree with you that they're not dead, but they're just misused a lot of times. And then there's also, I think sometimes people don't think about how they will all flow in the back end. And trust me, even email marketers struggle with trying to figure all of the tech out in the back end too. I literally talk to my friends about it all the time of like, how do I make this funnel work without sending people 50 emails, right? Like I've heard of that happening too, that people set up different funnels for different freebies, not thinking like, we'll talk about freebies in a second, but not thinking about like, oh, now people are going to get emails for each one if they sign up for each one. So you sometimes just, I say with funnels, start basic, start really basic, and then work your way up to more complex things. So if you are brand new to email, like I probably wouldn't worry about a funnel yet. I would just start sending emails. And then once you start sending emails and seeing how those emails are doing, you can take them and turn them into a funnel, right? Instead of going, oh, I got to build this whole funnel. This used to hold me back from emailing. I got to build this 5 email sequence. Oh, it's just such a project. And then I'm like, wait, why? Can't I just send one after another and then it's done? And it's so much easier. And it's not like trying to build this whole crazy thing. And that worked better for me, right? Some people might like it the other way, totally fine. But if you're sitting there overwhelmed, that's my advice. But yeah, I think a lot of times it's just not getting clear on their goals and it's not figuring out how to use their messaging to convert them into buyers.
So can we like go down that path a little? Like, how do you start making your messaging convert? Like, what does that look like? And how do you kind of balance out? Like, can we talk like nitty gritty logistics of like, I would do this for a first email, second email, third email, fourth. Like, what does that look like?
Let's just take a welcome sequence, for instance, right? So, and I'll do it from a service provider. Let's say you're trying to get them to either book a call with you. That's probably what most service providers are trying to do is get them on a call. So if you're getting people on your email list, if it's a free resource, that's the first thing you want to down, like a freebie, we call that, or a lead magnet. If you're using something like that to get people on your list, that's the first thing you want to do. I usually say in that email, there's controversy around this. I usually say in that email, just deliver the freebie. Like, don't fluff it up with stuff. People do not read that email. They click it. They want to get what they're getting for free. There are a lot of experts out there that will tell you, oh, this is the most opened / read email. So be sure to put in as all this stuff. And I'm like, no one reads it. Like I literally, when I get a free download, I just go download it. I do not read the email. So don't go crazy on this. That's usually what I say. If you're just inviting them to your list, like you don't have a free resource, you're just saying, get on my list. just do some sort of welcome. I do have a free template I'll give you that you can share with your audience too. That's just a
Oh,
free
amazing.
template for how to create a welcome email. So it
Mm-hmm.
has a template for creating it. So you can use that to create your welcome email. And essentially, you're just telling them what to expect on your list, what you're going to talk about, how often you're going to email them, just setting up expectations. So I know I've started two now, so stick with me, y'all. Um, so if you're giving them a freebie and or if you're welcome to your list, your next email, it kind of depends on your goal. So if our goal is to get them on a call, a lot of people will tell you at this point to give them a like about you email. Now, I don't love this because a lot of people just don't know what to do with that email. So they'll say things like, I like coffee and going to the beach. And I'm like, no offense, but nobody cares. They
Oh
don't
yeah.
know you yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone says that. Like they don't care. How can you either take your story and turn it into something that is shows that you were in their shoes and that now you are great at what you do, right? So if I'm when I was a wedding photographer, I might talk about like how when my husband and I got married and how what a disaster that was, even being wedding pros, and how frustrating that was for me. And then I saw what my couples go through, right? So I might tell that story so that my couples can kind of see, oh my gosh, yeah, wedding planning is crazy. It is really hard. Even wedding photographers have a hard time with it, all of that kind of stuff, right? So something that will relate to the pain point they are sitting in and either how you experienced it. And if it's not you, like maybe how you helped a client through it. So again, that's kind of what I like to do with that second email is like, how can I make it about them, but give them show myself as like I don't like the word authority, but you know what I mean, like a
Mm-hmm.
person to listen to,
Mm-hmm.
or an expert on topic. And then again, it just if it's hard to say from there, but in general, what I would do in the next, like usually a welcome sequence is anywhere between 3 to 5 emails long, depending on what you're doing. So in the third email, you can do things like share a story of something that like happened to you or to a client or and how you solved it for them. Those are really good. And that's a great way to invite them to come get on a call with you. If they want that experience, come get on a call. Let's see if it's the right fit. You can also share things about like why you do certain things the way you do them that maybe are different than other people in your industry. That's good for like wedding professionals too, because you could say things like, why you give an engagement session for free in every package, why you always make sure that there's a knife on the cake cutting table. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, that's kind of a crazy one, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can use different things like that. So that would be a great little kind of welcome sequence. And I would probably, if you wanted to go more, I would just probably continue on some stories like that, some ways for them to see, or even just tips too, right? Like where are they at right now, right? When they come, if they're planning a wedding or if they're, we'll just stick with the wedding example, but if they're like planning a wedding, what do they need? What do they need? Maybe even questions to ask if you're, a wedding planner. What questions should they be asking wedding planners? What should they be asking venues? What should they be doing, right? So giving them things and they're going to start seeing you as the person that is giving them advice that's helpful and you're showing up regularly. Like that means something. They may not realize it, but it means something subconsciously to keep seeing your name regularly in their inbox because they see you showing up regularly. They know you're going to have their back when they're a client.
No, that's amazing. I think that's like such helpful and tangible advice for someone that's like completely unsure on like where do we go from here and like where do we start. And I think also just like a reminder that like email lists are for helping, like they're for building like trust and for building relationships with people. Like I think that's such a great reminder that like again, I think I even need to hear that like they're people at the end of the day on the other side of the email. We can't see them, and we don't talk to them that often in a way that feels conversational, but like they are people and it's our job to like build trust with them.
Exactly, exactly. And also just keeping yourself front of mind, right? Like a
Mhm.
lot of time we see so much stuff out there. A lot of times people are like, I cannot possibly email regularly or like often, right? Because I have so many things going on. And I'm like, no, especially in the wedding industry, no one else is doing it, right? Like no one
Yeah.
else is using that regularly. So if they see your name all the time, they're going to remember you. Even if they don't work with you, they're probably going to refer you because they're going to see your name all the time.
Ooh, I love that. That's such a good like little mindset, little like psychology trick almost with sales is like you want to be the person that they think of when they're thinking of a certain niche.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has all been so incredibly helpful. Could you tell, I'm like, I am rethinking all of my funnels right now and like making sure that they like are nurturing enough while also selling enough. If you could give like a piece of advice, two pieces of advice actually, like a piece of advice for someone that doesn't have an email list and a piece of advice for someone that does, but maybe like isn't utilizing it, what would that advice be?
Okay, if you don't have one, just start. Like, I know that sounds so, it honestly isn't that hard. Just start. When I started, I was like, I'm just gonna start an email list. I don't even know what it's gonna be about yet. Like, I was just like, I'm just gonna share stuff. I shared like yoga practices I liked on YouTube. I shared like really random things. I just started, right? And what I did too that helped me a lot, and this will help even if you're in any state of email at this point. I picked a day I was gonna email a week, just one
Mm,
day. And I know a lot of you are probably thinking, I cannot possibly do anything more. I can't do it. One, like, I recommend weekly. If weekly is just too much for you, try and do every other week, but do not do less than once a month because, like, what's the point, right? Like, people are
mm,
just going to forget. And it's somebody else put it this way too. If you're trying to sell something, people need more touch points. They, especially now, because there's just so much stuff out there, they just need more touch points. So if you only email once a month, that's a really low touch point, right? Like, that's
mhm,
going to take you months. People need what? I mean, hundreds, I feel like now, but like I think the
mhm.
rule was like 7 to 11 or whatever touch points. Well, that'll take you a year to get to that many touch points. So,
Oh my God, that's such a
um,
great way of putting that. I'm like, yeah, that would take you a year, a
yeah,
literal year.
yeah. Yeah. And so again, don't be overwhelmed by this because I know everyone's like, oh God, I have to email this much. So what I did was I picked one day a week I was going to email and I send on Friday mornings. Literally, I bet you I could ask right now. I'd be like, what day do I send my emails? People will be like Fridays. They just know because I always send an email on Fridays. So that way I knew on Thursday nights I had to write my email because
Mm.
I'm a last minute Linda. Okay. I have to, I just do everything last minute. It's just what I do. It's all good. So I write them week to week because that just works for me. But if you're like a batch worker, you could totally write 4 emails at the beginning of the month and schedule them out and be done. Or you could do two if that's really what you need to do.
Mhm.
And then as you go, maybe you'll find you have more to say. That's what happens. I'm actually trying to build up to 2 times a week now because I'm realizing I have a lot more to say than I can say in 1 time a week.
Mm.
Um, so that's what I would do is I would just pick a day and then just stick to it. Keep yourself on that rhythm. If it helps you, set a timer to write your email. And the other thing I think people overthink is that they really don't need to be long. You really don't. This is not a blog post. This is not like SEO or any of that. You don't even have to worry about any of that. You don't need headlines or any. You could literally put an email out with like a couple sentences and call it a day. And people, like, I just
Mm.
saw this yesterday that somebody said no one's ever unsubscribed from an email because it was too short.
True. So true.
So just don't overthink. Like, literally, I've shared Christmas ornaments before in my emails, cookie recipes. Like, especially if you're a local, like you work with local people, share local spots you found, right? Like a great restaurant you found, talk about your experience there. You can even tie that back to like your own experience and your business. You know what I mean? So like just share what works for you. You do not, and not every email has to be business too. I think a lot of times that's what people think. Oh, I have to talk about my business, but you don't.
Mhm.
You really, people actually relate better when you don't.
See, I think I need that. I'm like, I need that permission to just be like, you can just talk and just like build relationships with people. And that's just as beneficial as like actually selling your products. Like, it's in fact
Totally.
just as needed to like hit all of those touch points.
Yep, exactly. I mean, this podcast episode, email. You know what I mean? Done.
Literally, my easiest emails I send are the podcast episode ones. I'm like, they're the best ones to send out because I'm like, hello, there's a new podcast episode. And then I'm done.
Exactly. Exactly. If you want to learn
Oh,
about this, click here.
yeah,
Done.
literally so easy. Well,
Cute
thank you.
graphic, call it a day.
Yeah, no, literally. I'm like easy peasy breezy. We love to hear it. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. This was all so helpful and
I'm so
actionable, and I
happy.
hope like really relieves people from the pressure of email lists starting, building, expanding, whatever stage they're at. So thank you so, so much for coming on.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm hoping this is very helpful. Just start emailing. I promise you it'll change your life.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, I'm gonna have to type up something tonight. I'm like, and it's gonna not be businessy. It's just gonna be me talking to my
Just for
friends.
fun. Yeah.
I love that. Well, we'll obviously link everything in the show notes, but could you let us know where everyone can find you online?
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to connect with you. I basically live on Instagram, so come find me there. I'm at Mrs. Vondy. Feel free to DM me or leave a comment somewhere or something just so I know who you are and how you found me. I love to get connect with you. And of course, if you have questions about email, you can always ask me there. It's my favorite topic. I could talk about it all day long. And then you can also head over to my website too, theemailclub.co, instead of .com. And you can connect with me there, get on my email list if you want to get my emails. And obviously I'll give you the free template email too, so they
Oh,
can
please.
grab the template and get on my email list that way too to get some inspiration for their own emails.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll link that for you guys in the show notes. And thank you so much, Shannon, for coming on. And thank you guys for listening.